All right, let's move on to other new business. Amend district calendar for 2013-2014 school year. Dr. Skinkis.
Three options. In 2008, 2009, there was a process that these Illinois State Board of Education set up for school districts so that they can put in a waiver for having classes or student attendance days on what the state has deemed legal holidays. An example of that is every year we have classes on Veterans Day, but we do instructional activities. When we put in for that waiver, we put in for it was a 5-year waiver, so we still have 1 year remaining. So I did talk to the West 40 Regional Services Center. That's kind of like our regional superintendent. With that waiver, we can hold classes on, we can have classes on those holidays, and those would make up the student attendance days that we canceled for the weather. We would have to do some instructional activities related to Kazimierz Pulaski and the President's birthdays or President's Day, honoring George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. But that was my primary recommendation. As you see, there's option number 2, which is eliminate Pulaski Day and the One Institute Day. And option number 3 was the use of the emergency days, which we have built into our calendar. It's a little different with high school. When you start to do that, now you're talking about seniors taking final exams at a different period of time from all the other students, or you're talking about moving the graduation ceremony into that week after Memorial Day. So we try, all my experience has been you really try to avoid moving graduation, because some parents will set up travel arrangements for family members a year in advance when the graduation date's set and put on the district calendar. So you try to avoid messing with graduation. I know when I spoke with the board last year and we were doing this calendar, and I talked about, I think we amended the one we approved last February so that we had the Institute Day in May. So in the event we had any other significant flooding, we could always use one of those Institute Days, because there's no type of waiver or any kind of process you have to go through with your regional office if you want to use an Institute Day for a student attendance day. My thought, though, is when we went through that cold snap and we went through the bad snow and we had to close for 2 days, we were on the verge of closing again Monday when I was dealing with Mike Connors and Joel. We're dealing with all these, with the couple roof leaks we had, because if we were going to have no phones or no computers, that might have been tough to open. So the reason I'm recommending option 1 is we still kind of keep that Institute Day in our pocket to get through the rest of winter, and in the event we get that heavy 5-year rain again where our rivers flood, we still kind of have one more in the bank before we really got to think about moving graduation or moving, doing 2 separate final exams and things like that. I've talked to the staff at the last faculty meeting, gave them a heads up. I didn't receive any negative feedback. I encouraged Pam today to, if the board approves this, that we would send out a notification to all families of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And that if for some reason somebody did have plans over one of those 2 days, and their students have to be out, parents should just follow normal attendance procedures and they'll be excused, and the students would be allowed to make up the work. But we run such a tight calendar. In the versions you're going to see tonight, I pulled a lot of districts' calendars, and Mary Ann and I looked at them. We tried to see if there was a way to get an extra student attendance day, just so we have kind of an emergency day built in. And when we're already starting next year. We're proposing to start like August 13th, and we go right till Memorial Day. So, and the reason that we do that is so that there's a balance. I did check with LTs and Naperville's and a lot of their calendars. They start pretty similar and they end pretty similar, but they had a 10-day variance in semesters. So where our teachers, and the history I got from Mary Ann and from some of the department chairs, is that it makes it really tough for those semester courses because in one semester you have 10 days, and another day one semester you got 96 days, and the other one you only got 86 days, and you're trying to cover the same amount of material. So with ours, we're like two days off. We're at I don't know the specifics, but we're at like 83 and 86, so we're pretty balanced. So my recommendation is that we would amend the calendar and the board would give me permission so that we can have notified parents, have classes on those 2 holidays, and we do some instructional activities over the announcements or a special assembly, whatever we need to do to make up those 2 days.
When I looked at these, I looked at the 3 days, and I said, the President's Day is one. If families have trips planned, that's typically when they do it, because you got spring break set up. They aren't looking at Pulaski Day typically, or the May 2nd. So I think if you're going to communicate, if we decide to go with option 1, we do need to communicate that we understood this, and that, they just have to go through that process that they normally would for an absence.
Right.
Any other comments?
I see on next year's calendar, we have a 5 or 6 day spring break,
Yeah, I could talk about that when we get to next year's calendar.
but we don't have that option here, right?
Yeah, and that's because of where the holiday falls in spring. I can touch on that.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of anything that's an instructional day before finals. I mean, that's clear. The using of the 2 emergency days would not, we'd be losing 2 instructional days for our students. Is that,
If the board felt they didn't want to do President's Day, the one other option that would cause some trouble that I did not provide would be that we hold attendance on the non-attendance day, and I believe it's in April, also referred to as Good Friday. We just call it a non-attendance day, but that's Good Friday.
April 18th?
Yes. The issue with that is that 12-month employees, all of our 12-month employees, that is one of their assigned holidays. During the 2 days we were closed, people were working from home. The second day we did have 5 or 6 people in the office. So those, we would be without a lot of our 12-month staff or have to provide a floating holiday then somewhere else throughout the year. So that's why I didn't propose that, because most of our 12-month staff is the district office, the business office, the principal secretary. So, those are some pretty significant positions.
My recollection is when we had to do this last year too, and Mike brought up a good point at the end, we lost a day. I mean, didn't the seniors take their test early, and then we added the day after the graduation?
We did, and we called that an exam makeup day.
Yeah, and nobody was here, so
Few kids.
I like the idea of, I Ed took a look, but as long as people know they have to make up the day, I don't see, and your staff's not going to complain. I like your option 1. And again, we could have 2 more storms and have to deal with it
Yeah.
again too.
This is why I don't want to burn that institute
Yeah.
day
So
just
I'll
yet.
read what option 1.
Option 1, and keep that May 2nd as your
Yeah.
backup.
Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves amending the 2013-2014 school calendar to add 2 student attendance days which were eliminated by the school closure due to inclement weather on January 6th and 7th, 2014 by amending February 17th, 2014 President's Day and March 3rd, 2014 Pulaski Day to student attendance days, as presented in the January 14, 2014 Board Agenda Packet.
Have a second?
Second.
Second by John Keane. Any other discussion? Mary Ann?
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Gritchen?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska, Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Cindy?
Yes.